Alright guys, so moving on. We're going to be now moving on to single leg, pattern, lunge. Okay, lots of variations again here. Great single leg exercise. Running involves a whole lot of ability to be good on that, single leg. So that's super important. So I'm going to get you to perform a lunge for you. We might actually down. Roll back there. We'll bring this one down just to that's here. Alright, so let's just have a look. I'm going to get you to just demo one. Let's say 5 reps. Good. So I'm actually going to get you to, that was nice. That's a nice forward lunge. Let's get you to split your stance and then we'll just actually do it in a static position. A couple more. What's going through your head already?
That's so cool. That's nice.
How does that look to everyone? How are we looking at it? We've got a good lunge. Looks like a pretty good lunge to me. Good, let's have a look at the other sides. Let's have your left leg forward. Just try and bring this hand up just a little bit more. Fold it back. That's good, good range of motion. Lovely, good. Okay. That's a pretty good looking lunge.
Yeah.
So it's not a whole lot we can pick wrong there. So that's great.
Who has a shit lunge?
I don't know. Who wants to put their hand up for that, man?
I'll go.
Look, yeah, okay. Well, I think it's all right. No, let's go. Let's have a look.
Alright, well, I don't know. This is my bad though. So I have a lot of ankle issues on this side that have been having for ages.
What I'll try and do is point out a little bit of the bad things that can go wrong in a lunge, I guess, now.
Oh, do you want me to demo some bad things?
Yeah, well, I mean, so generally with lunging, right, a lot of the things that can go wrong, let's just have a look.
Can I do something bad?
Yeah, just have a couple of
Alright, dog shit lunge.
Yeah, that's not great. That's obviously not great. I think a lot of things that can happen to the trunk is the lack of core stability, definitely, or core strength. Alright, that's a big one. But one of the ones you might see as well is they're going to be breaking at the knee first. So let's demonstrate that for me. Okay, big knee over the toe there. Not even sure what you call this.
Knee pain.
Yeah, but it happens. Okay, another thing that's quite common as well is we're going to see some knee collapsing. Alright? Very extreme, but it does. Yeah, it's extreme, but it does happen. We're not going to see it too much here, but we also see the ankles collapsing as well. Big thing I feel with the lunge as well is the range of motion. Right? If you're able to only go as far as your body allows you to, with these good things happening, essentially, again, looking out for buckling is a big one.
So where would the buckling happen?
Well, again, let's sort of go into a deep lunge. So there's just he's got the flexibility, so it's not going to happen here. Right? There is potential for posterior tilt to be happening. Exactly. I mean, that's extreme. Which is good at doing, but again, it can happen. Because particularly if you get to someone doing some single leg work and they barely stepped a foot in the gym, they just don't. It's proprioception. They really don't know how their body's moving so well. Yeah. And you've taken away that double foot base, haven't you? Right. And so again, we don't want to be going too wide in the lunge as well. Okay, we're going to be looking for again shoulder width. Okay, this nice strong posture, keeping the tummy tight. All these sort of normal cues, right? We don't want to get into that as a crossover gait we're talking about. Okay, sort of position either. So there's lots of variations. Great. I don't know. None of my clients like doing lunges. Essentially, they just find it too hard. It's obviously demanding. Great exercise to me. That's what that tells me. Obviously very effective. Yeah, is there anything else that you want to sort of talk about?
I'm so passionate about lunging. You have no idea.
Here we go. How long have you got?
How long do we have? It's an 11-month position of the baby. It's the first time we have 3 points of stability. All other points up until that, we had 4 points of stability. stability. It's a prerequisite for learning how to squat, because from here we come into this. And it's a prerequisite for learning how to walk and run. And most people, if they can't show me a good lunge both sides, if I was to be really, really strict with them, they don't have permission to squat. Because they don't have control of this, and this is an earlier developmental position. People hate the lunge because they say they get knee pain. It's only because they lunge with their knees. They're leading with their knees rather than with their hips, right? Because this is the thing that we want to move first, because the thing that moves first moves most. This is where you have most of your muscle mass. Runner's knee is that patellofemoral knee pain. It's basically the kneecap grinding against the thigh bone underneath. And for a lot of time, for years and years, they used to give people VMO activation to do. What they know now is that it's not actually the kneecap moving, it's actually the thigh bone moving over the kneecap because of a hip collapse. So now they give people these ones. But wouldn't it be a much more functional way to train your knee pain by actually coming into a lunge and learning how to load your hip so that you can come down and not piss off your knee? That's going to have a lot more carryover into running. So I agree with everything Art said, and I think all the trainers in the world need to be having all their clients doing lunges because it has such a big carryover. And you're also working a lot on balance and stability. You don't want this here because that's crossover gait. So some people, when they do lunges, they'll cross over, which we don't want when you run either, because that also predisposes to people to knee pain. You need to have a wide enough step width when you're running so that you're not dumping into the knee again. So everyone should be doing lunges every single day of the week. Some people, when they see me in clinic, they'll notice I'm not sitting in a chair, particularly for my initial consults. I'll be in a lunge position, and I'll be doing my consults here. And it's because this is so rehabilitative for your hip. I'm happy to spend 8 hours a day here, and I would, sometimes on my way down to Wollongong, I would literally do my notes, or sit on the train in this position. Everyone thinks I'm weird, but I think they're weirder for sitting on these weird chairs that are going to mess up their knees. And I work hard enough at my hip stability so I don't get knee pain, to not lose that with a 2.5-hour train ride down to Wollongong every day. So, that's all I have to say about the lunge, which is
Awesome. Well,
sit at a desk, is it, and you don't have the luxury of that lunge position, what things can you do throughout the day to sort of...
The biggest one is just moving, because we know if you're in the same position for more than 25 minutes, your muscles, ligaments and tendons shorten. So if you're in this position for longer than that, and then all of a sudden you're twisting to talk to a colleague, you're actually priming your brain to make this as the fixed point and actually move through your lumbar spine, which is actually going to be really detrimental to when you come into the gym. So the biggest one is just moving as much as you can throughout the day. I'm happy to write anyone a standing desk letter. I think I want all my patients having standing desks, not so that they stand all day, but so that they'll have the option to move around. And I actually like people moving around in their chairs. So actually the best chairs are dining room chairs that are nice and wide that people can shift on so they can continue to move. The worst ones are the ones that lean you back. Because when you do that, your hip flexor is going to engage, and all of a sudden your hip flexor is on all day, and then you try and run, and you run like this. You can't create any hip extension. So a lot of these ergonomic chairs that would massively lean people back actually aren't very good for their hips, and it has a carryover effect into when they run. Before you run, I would do some lunging and really just open up this hip. Dynamic movements, not so much the yogi one, right? Because again, that's all low back. You've only got 30 degrees of hip extension max. Most people have a hard time getting to neutral. Some people only have 10 degrees. So it's only going to be there. It's not going to be all the way there. So do some dynamic warm-ups to get that hip going into hip extension before you then run, particularly if you sit at a computer all day.
Last question.
Yep.
Is there a risk of not squaring your hips when you lunge? And I guess how would you focus on making sure that you stay square when you lunge? Or is it pretty normal? I don't know, I feel like times that I've done them recently that one side sort of collapsing.
Collapsing in what?
Well, as in, I don't know, I just feel like I'm almost sinking into the lunge. Maybe it's because I was trying to do an overly accentuated one and actually making a point of going forward with a sort of working on ankle mobility, and it just looked like in the mirror, it just looked like in the mirror that I was almost sinking one side, sort of sinking down.
So,
we can work out on our side. I was just curious if
the hip is triplanar, which means it will go through all three planes of motion. So if we take again the action of walking or lunging, as I come into foot strike, which is replicating the lunge, the initiation of lunge, this hip is actually going to go into three planes of motion. This is a bit complicated. So you're not only going to initiate hip flexion, you're actually going to also initiate hip adduction and internal rotation. So you will feel yourself shift over a little bit.
Yeah.
That's quite normal when you're doing a lunge and even when you're running. We don't want that to still be there at mid-stance because that's the Trendelenburg and tells me you're not using your glutes and you're still in a pronated state and you haven't come out of that to create supination to help propel you forward. But certainly as you're loading down into a lunge, you will feel this shift a little bit. That's normal. Yeah,
sure.
As long as this sort of stays over the second toe and doesn't roll in, and in which case you've moved too much into what we call the frontal plane, side-to-side motion, and you haven't loaded through all three. So you could have an internal rotation restriction, or you could have a hip flexion restriction. That needs to be addressed. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool.
So we're basically not aiming at being fully square.
Well, you will look square if you load it in the hip, because the net outcome is going to be this knee going this way, because the opposite hip is going to do the opposite. It's going into hip extension, external rotation, and abduction, because this is getting this glute to shorten to help propel you forward. So the net result will be, like you'll look like you've shifted your center of mass slightly, so I'm going to be all the way over here, but you're not going to be like, I don't even know. Hey?
Like an open split.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, beautiful. I'm learning a lot tonight.
Let's do the lunge.
Yeah.
Some people get knee pain when they lunge forward. Does anyone know what the wobble girl is? So the wobble girl, there was this chick in the US and she had a flu vaccination or something, and she claimed after the flu vaccination she couldn't walk, and so whenever she walks she does these ones. Which is a lot of my patients when they lunge. And then she could walk backwards fine, and she could run.
No way.
So if you're having a hard time lunging forwards, seriously try lunging backwards. It's actually what we give stroke patients as well, because it actually helps rewire, it uses different wiring in their brain and actually helps them retrain gaze. So if forward lunging feels pretty shitty, try backwards lunging. Be wobble girl. Embrace wobble girl. It'll make you a better lunger in the long run.
Awesome. All right, let's do it.